Mihawk versus Shanks. This debate has been piercing the One Piece community since I was in diapers. Despite who you think will actually win, I must apologize because I have just clickbaited you. Sorry. You're a victim. This video will not address any power scaling or Mihawk's potential strength at all. I'm saying Mihawk is weak in the eyes of the narrative. Mihawk vs Shanks and Mihawk vs Zoro has always been the two most renowned topics carrying the allure of Mihawk. Everything about Mihawk since his legendary introduction has always been about the ceiling he represents and the pinnacle of power he allegedly has. I'm aware it is super easy to slander Mihawk. Everyone on the planet is. It's super easy to think that he's nothing but a bum. Agenda Piece unironically carries his reputation more than Oda or any editor, animator, storyboarder, director, or anyone related to the story of One Piece. And it's pretty simple why this is the case. Very low reading comprehension. While I do mean for that to be a little facetious when I say it, media literacy is incredibly important for Mihawk. Mihawk's only real feats are in an arc where everyone is holding back and everyone is nerfed. Obviously, if you're supposed to be the strongest in the field, but your team captain is actively holding you back, you're gonna look like a bench warmer. Firstly, we have to get into what really happened at Marineford. However, I tricked you again. Before we actually get into Marineford, we have to get into the global perception of Mihawk. A natural prerequisite before getting into Mihawk is getting into his status. Naturally, this presupposes that there is some divisiveness or ambiguity in this field of expertise. One scroll on Twitter and whoa, it is not looking good. Even when we go on Reddit, we still can't escape this stuff. Look at what this guy says. Mihawk is washed, and if you can't see that, then you're coping. His only feats are trolling the East Blue, weak at Thea, for fodder and getting his attacks tanked and deflected by Jozu. He literally tried to throw an attack at Whitebeard, and he got tanked by Whitebeard's third strongest commander. And then he spent the rest of the war fighting Mihawk to a goddamn draw. Are you serious? And he won't fight Shanks because his arm's gone? Please. This dude is running scared because Shanks is a Yonko and actually strong. Zoro left this clown in the dust a while ago. Nobody respects Mihawk. For whatever reason, there will be comment after post after debate all denouncing the ability of Mihawk. Whether you choose to believe them or not is not what's in question today. We will get into all of that later, but this is a necessary tablet to understand that Mihawk is not at all glamorized, at least in the eyes of the fandom. Why is that the case? Just take a look at Marineford. Mihawk says he wants to measure the distance between us and that man, seemingly conceding that old sick Whitebeard is superior to him. He then apparently says he's not gonna hold back, then he just can't kill Luffy. Afterward, he gets stalemated by Vista, a commander level threat. Then in his final performance, he leaves after Shanks agrees to fight anyone who wants to smoke. Mihawk says he agreed to fight Whitebeard, not Shanks. Like, are you scared? Are you pussy? Are you afraid? However, everything I'm about to say should be common knowledge, but apparently it's not. When you take into account that Mihawk has a 3.5 billion berry bounty with no crew, land, or influence, as well as the fact he was stated to have sword skills that surpass Shanks, someone who is a swordsman, his actions should all be too clear at Marineford. In no way is Mihawk supposed to be weak during this arc. Nobody is. Whitebeard was even scared of some fodder fucking pirates in Buggy's gang. When Mihawk says he wants to see the gap between us and that man, Mihawk is not referring to himself. He says us as in the world government and warlords versus Whitebeard's legacy, including his own crew and the multiple other crews that are subservient to him. This action is immediately contextualized when one of his commanders blocked the strike. Does that mean Jozu is Mihawk's equal or rival? No, Mihawk was essentially throwing out a jab and expecting it to be blocked by the people under Whitebeard, as that will be a showcase of the power and respect he holds, aka his legacy. Whitebeard was known as the world's strongest man. Why would Mihawk, someone who rarely shows up to any meeting and doesn't care for anything related to the world government, associate himself with them in this sentence? Just like virtually every pirate ever, he respects Whitebeard and Roger. He wants to test the power and respect he commands. If you don't believe or subscribe to this interpretation and honestly think that Mihawk is conceding to old Whitebeard, then you believe Mihawk also thinks he's significantly weaker than the average admirals. As we see, the admirals were all individually piecing up Whitebeard, therefore Mihawk would be weaker than all of them. I don't believe Mihawk will be so much weaker than the admirals if he really is Shanks' rival. You're allowed to believe whatever you want. I'm just trying to present the facts and state what makes sense to me personally. Again, I believe Mihawk is testing the fragility of the current affairs. Remind me, what did Doflamingo say? Just like Dofi, Mihawk is trying to see if the era of pirates or the era of marines will take over, with naturally the government and Whitebeard leading the charge. Beside that, let's move on to a more pressing talking point. Was Mihawk holding back at Marineford? Many people will actively tell you that he was going all out and etc. This is untrue. Not only is it stupid narratively to demonstrate a character's full power in an arc where he was almost irrelevant in, it will be a terrible idea in general. Oda did not map out the future power scaling at all. We know power scaling is important to One Piece because that keeps tension, reader engagement, and coherence within the general story. Making the world's strongest swordsman be weak enough to be unable to kill a pre-time skip Luffy does not make any lick of sense. What actually happens is that Mihawk was holding back. The most important distinction here is Mihawk. Mihawk was holding back, but not Yoru. I know it sounds like some ratty nonsense, trust me, I know, but that's just the truth. We know swords in One Piece have a will of their own or some magic, sentient, consciousness, whatever. This is likely how curses form and why devil fruits can be given to swords. Mihawk, in the official translations, also says this power knows no restraint. This power is obviously referring to Yoru. He then rhetorically asks if Luffy is the Miracle Man, and will he be able to escape the blade, again testing him. Remember, Mihawk is interested in Luffy simply because Shanks bet his entire arm on him. He is testing Shanks' bet on the future by asking Fate if Luffy will escape once again. All it takes is the smallest amount of media literacy to understand this or posit this idea. I don't think you can naturally disagree with this, but if you do, let me know, because I'll easily debunk that shit in the comments. Of course, Mihawk leaving has been used to slander him for years now. As I just explained, Mihawk only wanted to test the legacy of Whitebeard. There would literally be no need to fight Shanks just for fun after thinking he is weaker than before. I bring up these points to say that Mihawk isn't weak, and everyone who legitimately engages with the series understands this. The world's strongest swordsman. Recognized by the government, the narrator, and Oda himself, with the legacy of the strongest, this naturally entails some competition. Being the strongest means there must be losers and runner-ups. However, why don't we ever see a person like that? How come we never see anyone try to become the world's strongest swordsman? Isn't that odd? We don't even see anyone attempting to get a black blade. Why is that, however? No matter what you come up with, no one is contesting Mihawk's title or anything he stands for. He seems to be a vacant placeholder. If we saw strong people like Big Bomb or Kaido talk about or hype up Mihawk, he wouldn't get his name thrown into the ground on Twitter. It does not make sense for him to be irrelevant inside the story of One Piece though. If Kaido has Shanks in his top 5, would he not equally respect Mihawk based on that same logic? If Blackbeard has fought Shanks and is actively worried about New World contenders while trying to advance his pirate career, would he not actively be aware of Mihawk? The samurai don't even mention the only person who created a black blade other than their fucking god. Isn't it incredibly odd how Mihawk has zero mention, zero connection, zero relevance at all to Wano, the land of swordsmen? There are a million people in this story that use weapons, from every single Yonko we've seen to Law, Killer, Katakuri, Rayleigh, Katakuri, even Kizaru was using a weapon to fight. The overall problem I'm trying to highlight is that there is a lack of nuance to differentiate people who use weapons and swordsmen in general. When that is established, you need a proper framework to gauge how these people would theoretically be weaker than Mihawk or be stronger. To this day, it is entirely difficult to imagine Mihawk with an attack that's as strong or stronger than the Ikoku sovereignty or divine departure. This is because in a long story like One Piece, portrayal matters towards characters, and Mihawk's portrayal is quite literally fucking terrible. What's especially concerning is how Mihawk's portrayal seems to be categorically worse than other people. Garp, Sengoku, Rayleigh, Blackbeard, Boa, all these people have infinitely better handled portrayal. When the chapter of Roger and Garp taking out rocks came out, everyone and their mothers were all glazing Garp from dusk to dawn. We were so excited for any flashback and had a newfound respect for Garp. Ironically, in the next Wano interlude, Mihawk is seen getting chased down by vice admirals? Why would the government actually send Marines to go capture Mihawk if they didn't believe they had an honest chance at it? By Oda writing Marines capturing Mihawk, or at least attempting to, it tells the reader that maybe he is that weak, maybe he is that fallible, which would be a direct contradiction to what Oda wants you to think about Mihawk. To put it in perspective, it became well known that Rayleigh was living on Sabaody. However, the pirate-hating Fleet Admiral Sakazuki did not go to capture him or anything. There are more nuances here, obviously, like the Marines being spread thin, but nonetheless, the government thinking they could legitimately take Mihawk in is fucking crazy and only goes to disrespect his portrayal. The overarching problem that I have, that I've only been vaguely alluding to, is how Mihawk as a concept is entirely mishandled because Oda does not write. The idea of a swordsman and a sword in general doesn't have any weight in One Piece at all. Mihawk ironically once said, "Without subtlety, a sword is an iron bar." That line, however, is completely irrelevant in One Piece because you would think people just use pieces of iron to bang each other with. What nuance does Zoro have against Pika? What subtlety is there with Katakuri slamming a hole into Luffy's chest? These actions are simply just hockey-infused attacks against a much weaker opponent. Even though the presentation was obviously more amateurish, there was a genuine sense of skill during Mihawk's fight against Zoro. It's pretty obvious why this is the case when examining again Oda's terrible lack thereof writing. Do sword ranks actually matter? Obviously they don't, but why don't they? A supreme grade sword seems like it should be the ultimate fuck you device, but functionally there is no real difference. If it were revealed that Law upgraded his quality of sword, or one of the Scabbers had a special grade weapon, it wouldn't change anything about the story, even though it should. If there's no difference between the best sword rank and the worst sword rank, it makes you ask, why is there rank at all? It especially seemed like Oda wants these ranks to matter whenever Zoro and Mihawk are involved, but fleshing something out only when it's convenient to the plot is weak writing by itself. As an example, when Mihawk ran through Zoro like a college freshman looking to find herself, he cut 2 out of 3 of his blades. The only one he didn't cut was the Wado Ichimonji. It makes sense why Mihawk went through 2 fodder blades like butter, but also couldn't break this sword because again, it is the second highest rank. This idea being present in the story but not taken into any other level is simply egregious. There is no clear difference or matchmaking error from a person with a black blade versus someone without one. You would think a blade permanently coated black because of the hockey reinforcement would be infinitely better than any other sword, but no, that's not the case. Enma, surprisingly, as a sword, seems like the biggest plot hole, plot armor, plot convenience sword ever made, simply because not only does it make you stronger by using it, you have to be a certain level to use it in the first place. Shouldn't that be the standard for every high level sword? Mind you, Enma's literal counterpoint is just a regular ass sword. Enma isn't even a cursed blade, it's literally the same rank as the Wado Ichimonji. So we have the writer writing Enma to be a god sword simply because he said so? When Big Mom told Kaido to dodge his attack, was it because of Enma or was it because of Zoro? If Mihawk used Yoru, would Big Mom also say the sword isn't normal? When you ask these questions, the answer you get can't make any sense.
How can you tell I'm doing negative? There is no possible way you can tell. How can you tell I'm losing right now in Call of Duty, bro?
All of this is to say that swords and the intrinsic concept of swordsmanship in One Piece is so fundamentally flawed due to the lack of writing in the series. And because the idea is so anti-fleshed out, the characters that directly benefit from such a framework become infinitely weaker. I would go as far as to say the characters who exclusively benefit from it end up being incredibly poorly written, hence Mihawk. Similar to his general portrayal, if swords in general matter to One Piece, people wouldn't say Mihawk painted his blade black. We would have an example of other blades being crafted and other swordsmen crafting that blade. Outside of assuming the strong people should have the best loadouts, the sword ranks of Whitebeard and Roger did not matter at all to their legacy. You would especially assume it would be relevant because of how they ushered in a new wave of piracy. Vista wasn't even impressed with Yoru or Mihawk's sword rank. No one is walking around looking to achieve a black blade, nor are they impressed with one. Functionally, they have no purpose. It is literally just a cosmetic in the game that nobody wants. This is a huge departure from how they were obviously set up to be. Zoro, as an example, had Shisui for around half of the story, but there's been literally nothing to show for it. He didn't get stronger because of Shisui, he didn't bond with Shisui, he didn't become more noteworthy in the world because of Shisui. He was simply just a nigga with a sword like everybody else. And you know what's worse than a nigga?
You know what's worse than a nigga? 2 of them.
By now, you understand the point. Swordsmanship does not matter. However, it needs to matter to help Mihawk's general portrayal. As it stands right now, Mihawk is strong, but only when Oda remembers that he is. Mihawk as a character is supposed to be the stepping stone for Zoro, one of the primary main characters of the series. Zoro would not stop until he was number 1. He would not settle for anything less. As a kid, he wanted his skill and name to reach the heavens. What name will reach the heavens past Mihawk though? If Garling or Shamrock are stronger than Mihawk, how the hell will Zoro be living up to his own standards? Does this matter to the story at all?
I don't know.
Who's to say? Mihawk as a character is very interesting simply because he goes against the nature of what a pirate is. Right now though, it just seems like Mihawk is just another drop in the bucket for Oda's tons of wasted characters. I hope any critiques and questions made throughout the video we can take and accept and still look at One Piece as generally good. In all fairness, if Oda nails the voice entry stuff and the ancient weapons and Emu and etc., no one will talk about swordsmanship and how broken it is. The thing is though, if Oda can't even get simple concepts like this done right for the story and his main character, I wonder how he can handle something infinitely more complex that makes or breaks a series. I don't know, but I'm excited for what he can do.
Yeah, good solo hole every time.
Far too simple a victory. You should have more respect.
Fucking retard, bro.
Who is this guy? Who is this guy? Who is that guy? Who is that guy?